Harley Reid. Are we all gripped by Harley Reid fever? I am. This guy's the most beloved first-year player to ever come into the competition. I love the hairstyle, how relaxed he is, and he's dominating on field. But I was really looking forward to watching him play against Gold Coast again, Sam, on Sunday. But you've got an update on his potential selection.
We don't think he's going to make the trip to Gold Coast. It's the longest trip in
No.
football. Maybe they don't want young Harley with his ego maybe a little bit inflated this week out on Cavill Ave.
That's not why they'd be resting
No, I'm
him.
joking there. But look, it's a big out for this. It sucks a lot of life out of this game.
Yep.
They want him fresh for a couple of weeks' time when they face Essendon at home and then Collingwood. So he's going to be fresh to face the Anzac Day teams. It's a big blow, but
He couldn't be that sore, could he?
Can he be $1 million player in year 3, Jay?
He certainly can. So this is a contract loophole, and we didn't even really know about this until this week. So it's a bit of a new thing. We know that first and second year players earn not much. So Harley Harley Reid this year earn $130K plus $4,000 match payments, a little bit around the side with some various awards, etc. Second year, $200. In his third year, this is where this new contract loophole comes into it. He can double or triple his earnings at West Coast, which could go a huge way to help keeping him at the club. Certainly, he looks very happy. We might bring up the criteria on screen. Basically, he's got to tick off one of these things. He either's got to finish top 10 in the Brownlow, there we go, top 5 in the Best and Fairest, top 5 in the AFL Rising Star, make the All-Australian squad, or play 20 games as a top 1-5 that pick. We already know he's got the Rising Star nomination. Long story short, if he ticks one of those boxes, he could...
Not all 5.
Just one. He could earn an extra $500,000-$600,000 on his contract as an additional service agreement. West Coast has $1.25 million to splash around, as if Harley Reid's not going to get a huge slice of that cake.
And you'd have to argue too. I mean, not only we saw what he did on the field on the weekend, absolutely everywhere.
Yep.
Gives a nice little chip in the radio interview afterwards to David Mundy, so he's got the personality to match obviously what he's doing on the field.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not worth that at the moment, is it?
It's a marketing bonus. Yes. And he's already done his marketing for this club for the next 10 years.
He's the most marketable figure in the West.
It is richly deserved. My mind goes to the other players. I mean, I think of Caleb Windsor, maybe Nate Caddy next year, Riley Sanders. These are all guys drafted last year who are red-hot chances to be eligible to tick one of those boxes and get juicy contracts in year 3.
As if Gold Coast hasn't got
Jed
that.
Walter.
Oh, that have that circled. Craig Cameron would be dishing out extra hundreds of thousands to keep Jed Walter up north. Speaking of signings, Max Holmes is a big one for the Cats. Scotty Gallen put this on the radar a couple of weeks ago that the interest was absolutely huge, but he's staying a Cat.
He is. So a 4-year deal for Max Holmes. I think that takes him through to free agency. For me, the big one is the domino effect here. So the Geelong had close to 20 players out of contract.
Yep.
This was clearly the biggest priority. Max locked away. I think that puts to bed any suspicion that he was a bit flat about that 2022 premiership he missed out on when he thought he passed a fitness test on the hamstring.
Yep.
We thought he was a little bit bitter about that, but he's locked in. I think Tyson Stengel and Ollie Henry maybe are the next two. Certainly Stengel. Yep. They're the next two big fish the Cats have to lock away, but that's a massive signature.
And growing legs on field. I tell you who's also growing legs, certainly in terms of their contract value. It's North Melbourne's Luke Davies-Uniacke. So next year, he will become the most sought-after player in the game, I believe. So he's a free agent, restricted free agent next year. And with that, Chris Judd burst, that superstar turn. St Kilda, Essendon, Adelaide are going to throw the absolute kitchen sink at this man. And he's in no hurry to sign because you look, Lauren, at North Melbourne's direction. What is it? He's won how many games? 18 games out of his last 91.
Oh,
isn't
it
smart, Lauren, to just hold the phone, see the direction of the football club? There it is.
If you're Luke, absolutely. I mean,
then next year he's going to have every club after him.
Couldn't agree more with you, Jay. Obviously, you wrote this for the Herald Sun today.
Yep.
If you're Luke, you're going to put this thing off as long as possible.
Yep.
I mean, Jared mentioned it earlier on AFL 360.
Yep.
It's down to Tassie this weekend against Adelaide. It's hardly Broadway, is it, for them this weekend as a start? And as you say, the direction of this club, I mean, Alistair Clarkson's at the helm. There's been sort of questions about whether he's the solution at the moment and exactly where they're heading. I mean, so much talk about the youth and that you'd rather be North Melbourne. I'm not sure you really would at the moment. And he obviously wants to, as you say, sit back and see what plays out. Whereas if you're North, you'd be getting him in there this week, wouldn't you, and trying to lock that down.
Well, imagine him watch Ben Mackay stick out for Essendon
exactly.
on Anzac Day on Thursday.
And Goldstein.
You'd be jealous, wouldn't you? You'd think St Kilda, who need that glitz and glamour and burst and power in the midfield, Stephen Silvani is going to... He'll bring 2 briefcases to the meeting and they'll be filled with cold, hard cash. What about North Melbourne, Sammy? It is time for What Are Your Tackling? I know you're working on something over the next couple of days. You're doing a deep dive on the Kangaroos. How did they get here?
I think the flashpoint was 2016 when they sacked Boomer Harvey, Drew Petrie, Michael Ferrito and Nick Del Santo. So Brad Scott told Boomer, I think one-on-one, that he was out the door at the end of the year. Word filtered through the locker room, and since then it's been an absolute mess. I think James Brayshaw was the chairman at the time, and he said, we need a 5-year plan here. Well, 8 years on, and it's gone worse. I mean, the appointments of David Noble and Reece Shaw didn't work as senior coaches. I had a look. Since 2014, they've brought, when they signed Sean Higgins and Jared Wade, who I think were masterstroke moves, they brought 95 players through that football club. 95
I
reckon
Kangaroos.
There's about 15 ticks and about 80 crosses, and that might be being generous.
Right, OK, let me stop you there. So what do you think? You step into the shoes of a North Melbourne fan and they're frustrated. They go along to Marvel Stadium at the weekend. Where are they pointing the finger? Where are they most frustrated with? They've been through a few coaches. Are you saying it's the recruiting?
Before you get to that, I'll just give you some of the names. So they cut Boomer and that, and they say, right, we're going to go down the youth strategy.
Yep.
But then they bring in Nathan Horvath, Marley Williams, Jared Pollock, Jasper Pittard, Dom Tyson, Aaron Hall, Josh Walker. So they had a bet each way. They should have gone down the youth path after 16. They didn't. And
you
now
reckon
they're
they're paying the price of all that back then, because otherwise some top-line talent would be in their 7th, 8th year, like Luke Davies-Uniacke.
Right now, as a collective, they've polled 18 coaches' votes between 5 players. Isaac Heaney's polled 47. 22 players have polled more votes than North Melbourne can find. It's a great question about where the heat goes now. I mean, I want to ask the question, what about Brady Rawlings in this? So he's been demoted multiple times. He's been the constant. Should he be under some heat?
Well, when you look at the numbers and the names, I mean, you said 95 players have come through the door. You're raising the bat to crack the ton that no one wants to see in that regard, do you? But, I mean, he's been there a long time.
The key position talent's the big question mark for me, because he's got to have the biggest worm on the hook this year in discussions now with managers trying to get big players for either end. Because down back, we heard David King on First Crack and Lee Montagna on Sunday night. They're all at sea back there, so they need some quality. And last year, we speak about Crossroads, Sammy, so they won the game against Gold Coast, which was extraordinary, which I think we all said at the time, to be honest. This is not a hindsight thing. They could have had the first pick with Harley Reid and then tried to trade to get him.
Yeah.
How will we look back on that?
So we all think that Eddie Ford and Nick Larkey cost North Melbourne Harley Reid with that burst in the third quarter against Gold Coast. Yeah. But, you know, hats off to them. You know, they don't want a culture of tanking. But they still could have got this bloke. I mean, at the trade table, I mean, we all think that picks 2 and 3 would have got the deal done. So I want to put the question forward right now. Would you trade right now, if you're North Melbourne, Colby McKercher and Zane Duursma for Harley Reid? Would you do that right now?
See, I would argue, given their history with only recent history, Jason Horne-Francis, and obviously his departure to Port Adelaide, my argument would be no. It was an anomaly, but...
No, nightmare.
Nightmare. Sorry, I thought you said an anomaly.
Disaster.
But I think given that recent history, could you put all your eggs in the Harley Reid basket to then be in the same situation? I think they've been burned before. Fool me once, you know, as the saying goes, and then fool me twice. What if it happened again?
I think Colby McKercher, he hasn't quite exploded just yet. I think Sonic the Hedgehog, they call him, Colby McKercher will be an absolute superstar. And Zane Duursma, I mean, there's a bit of Nat Fyfe there with that overhead marking. So I know Reid has gone bananas, but I still think
they made the right call.
2 excellent players taken in the top 5.
Long term.
I would still think they would really strongly back that in, but... Did we know last year there was such a gap between the...
Well, we did. Recruiters did. I mean, this is a generational talent. We were talking about Harley Reid 18 months out from the draft. The 1 point Clubs made to me today was the fact that the Harley Reid we're seeing at West Coast, that version, would we be seeing that same version of Harley Reid if he went to North Melbourne?
Question marks on the development.
Question marks on the development, the resources, the players around him. I mean, North Melbourne players, when they get drafted, they've cut so deep. They don't have these superstars to teach them the habits and how to set up your week Monday to Friday.
Well, Horn Francis is going well at Port Adelaide now, and we've got to take our hats off to Port Adelaide, right?
Yep.
So that's a sort of similar situation. So would he be going well as North Melbourne? I don't know.
I mean,
you'd have to
Harley Reid walks in the West Coast. He's got premiership stars there, and Elliot Yeo and Jeremy McGovern, and Tim Kelly and that to teach him the way.
He looks like he's got a massive smile on his face. Harley Reid at the moment. Why wouldn't he? Although he'd be out this weekend against Gold Coast.